so much for having me. I really appreciate the invitation to talk about how trees work, why trees matter. Trees can reduce the temperature around your home by 30 to 40 degrees in the summertime. Trees provide shade, and that is, you don't really need a temperature gun to measure that, but it is actually a measurable difference that we can look at in our urban areas. And they actually provided this graphic that looked at the different areas here in the Treasure Valley. When we look at our different neighborhoods, we can see we have some neighborhoods that are more heavily shaded. If you've ever been to the North End in Boise, that's a really mature neighborhood with lots of older trees that have a lot of shade canopy. And you have this trend towards lower temperatures in the summertime. And then you also have areas that really don't have a lot of tree cover that were established later in our area here in the Treasure Valley. And you see these areas near the airport. If you've ever been out near I-84, there's not a lick of shade on the highway there. And with the effect of the concrete and kind of our urban jungle here, any road surface, any building is going to give off more heat if it's not, shaded with some canopy. So those places end up getting hotter in our summer times and have that higher base level temperature. Trees also provide energy savings. And what's really important here, the takeaway that I really want you to see here is that our trees provide more savings the older that they get. So really what we call our ecosystem benefits or ecosystem services from trees, they do that more and more the older that they get. So we really want trees to live long lives, to live to maturity if they can, or at least to this period of, being 50 years old, 100 years old, because trees can live a really long time. And the maximum benefits that we receive from them happens when they're older. Plus, it's just really fun to have old trees in our lives. They become really personal to us, and there's a lot of significance to those, older heritage trees in our communities. But they have other benefits too, like removing air pollutants. This was another study that was done here in the Treasure Valley. We have a lot of cars running through here in Southwest Idaho, and trees remove hundreds of tons of air pollutants per year, whether that's CO2 or sulfates or particulates in the air, these things that we don't want to be breathing in, trees are removing from our landscapes. And it's saving us millions of dollars in adverse health effects from us not breathing that nasty stuff in every year because our trees are removing that for us. They're cleaning our air, as we know. Trees also mitigate stormwater issues. They help to basically like slow down the effects of stormwater. So by all of those little rain droplets hitting our tree canopies, it slows down the stormwater, allowing our soils, especially in the built environment where you may not have a lot of access to soil directly, maybe covered up and with those impervious surfaces. So that stormwater runoff can be a really big problem. Well, trees mitigate that runoff so that we're not incurring flooding and having those other issues. Beyond that, trees provide wildlife habitat. If you're interested in birding or looking at wildlife, trees are really important for our different bird species here that we have here in Idaho. We have a lot of different birds that are really important to our natural ecosystems and important to your own home pest control too. If you have a bunch of owls in your backyard, you're a lot less likely to have issues with mice and voles and other things in your landscape. Trees are also really interesting and have a deep history with humans that is really important to honor as well. A lot of people think that the earliest crops that were cultivated in the world were wheat or corn or something like that. Turns out it's fig trees that were cultivated outside of Jericho in Israel and that area of the world 11,000 years ago. And we were taking these cuttings and moving fig trees around in the Middle East long before we were cultivating wheat plants and corn. Trees are also just fascinating to study. This is a picture of a willow tree from a client that I did a site visit with, and they had willow leaves rooting in their yard by the leaf attachment, the petiole, in their lawn. And it wasn't happening a lot. It wasn't a big issue, but it's just fascinating to see how trees want to thrive, want to live, are propagating themselves naturally, and just provides something, interesting for us to learn about. So there's a lot of benefits to having trees.